this is a session. This is a session that we've been planning for a little while, so I'm really excited that we're all here today. So today we are going to talk about how can LIANZA's values help guide professional judgment and practice as AI becomes part of library and information work. And so this session really responds to our member survey feedback, where ethics, privacy, copyright, environmental impact, Māori and Indigenous data, those considerations and the practical guidance that people are asking for. And the core message today is AI is changing the information environment, and our professional values, they matter even more. And so today is not a debate. It's not a policy setting session or a deep dive into every AI issue. It's a kōrero. So we are exploring, we're listening, and we're reflecting together, because people will be at different stages within their AI journey. And we're going to just kind of lean into sometimes those uncomfortable situations, because it is difficult. And I think we need to really acknowledge that it's not easy when we are working in these different spaces. But that's why values are important. And so I'm just going to bring up our values. Let me just share my screen. No, I don't think I can. Right, well, I will read them and we can maybe paste them into the chat as well. So what are the LIANZA values? They are whakaute, respect, whakamana, empowerment, mana taurite, equity, whakapono, trust, mahitahi, collaboration, and kaitiakitanga, guardianship. And so these can be a compass for when we're navigating in an AI-shaped information environment. So our professional values may not provide all the answers, but they can help us navigate, use, and shape AI with purpose, judgment, and care. So not only for ourselves, but also for our organizations and the communities we serve. So I have two fantastic people who are going to speak today. First up, we have Mark Crookston, who is president of LIANZA and also the Director of Content Services at National Library. So, and also during the conversation, we're going to have a couple of polls that we'll put up as well. So look out for those. But Mark, would you like to start about how you're perhaps thinking about AI has changed and the LIANZA values that you look at when you're working with AI?
Yes, kia ora. Thank you, Erin. Kia ora koutou. Slight change to my job title. I'm now Director Digital at the National Library and Archives New Zealand. So the two institutions came together and that structure was put in place from July last year. So yes, that's sort of where I am at the moment. Also navigating the transition from normally Teams meetings to what are we on Zoom? And now that I've shared my screen, can you all see that? I can't actually see you anymore, so I'm just going to talk.
Good, Mark.
It's good? Okay. Here we go. So some AI and values from the perspective of, I say National Library of New Zealand, but really it's National Library of New Zealand and Archives New Zealand where, as I said, we've come together structurally, organisationally. We have our separate mandates, but a lot of the work is sort of combined and So I've got a brief presentation which outlines some contexts in which the National Library is working, and then some sort of tensions that are existing in our progression of our AI agenda, and just sort of how some of the values are helping shape that work. So the first main bit of context really is just around for libraries, especially those libraries who hold significant collections of unique documentary heritage. It's not just a question of how we're using AI, but how AI is using us. So not what are our use cases, but when we are the use case. It used to be that a lot of visitors to our digital sites were not humans, but bots, but trained bots. But from late 2024, that changed quite significantly. It used to be that there were more easy to identify sort of patterns of bot use and how we could sort of play defense against them, or just sort of manage and understand them a lot better. And they used to sort of obey the rules-based order of putting information on the web where you could put text and don't crawl our site. You could put as robots.txt type information. And often that was sort of enough, but the rules-based order is not really in place anymore in large parts of society, really. And that we noticed quite a huge spike in bot crawling of our online collections and our metadata from late 2024. Essentially, the owners of the large language models have reacted to the criticism of most of their content being created from slop, to realizing that libraries, archives, and museums exist and have extremely high quality data. Often we've been at pains to try and let people know that they can access it for free, which is part of our own kaupapa. So we have high quality, complex data that often gives like a temporal or a time-based sort of dimension to it. So, language models and complex inference machines can make a lot of good sense of that. So that's our context. There's a couple of bits of data here, 1.8 billion requests in 90 days, just from the National Library site. That's minus our Digital New Zealand site, 110 million on the Archive New Zealand sites the last 90 days. So it's just 90 days with the stats. And so the numbers have really exponentially grown. And it's really causing challenges on our use data and our reporting data and our ability to make sense of what's happening now. And that's creating some questions and challenges, which I'll address in a minute. Also of significant context is the extent to which we manage and control and provide access to Mātauranga Māori. So Chapter 6 is from the Y262 report on claims concerning New Zealand, law and policy affecting Māori culture and identity. And this Chapter 6 is a really amazing chapter, a really informative chapter, which I encourage people to read, and it specifically addresses Archives New Zealand and National Library in there. But even though it specifically references us, it also talks more generally about libraries and museums and archives. It talks about the tension of providing access and protecting at the same time, and it concludes that there needs to be a balance between two key principles. One is that Māori have a strong treaty-based interest in the Mātauranga held by Archives New Zealand and the National Library, and the fundamental importance of maintaining relatively free public access to such Mātauranga, especially public access for Māori to such Mātauranga. And the report kind of acknowledges that tension between those two forces at play. Also like to acknowledge that libraries are almost always part of broader organisations. So for the National Library, we're part of the Department of Internal Affairs. You'll all be part of your own sort of organisational contexts in some way. This is just a snapshot of a screenshot of our own intranet and some of the AI related resources, learning resources we get access to, policies and strategies within our own organisation. So as a library sitting within a larger corporate structure, there's some context there to deal with. And sometimes that's, the drive to try and digitise through AI, which is quite strong in central government at the moment. But also there's part of the empower and grow kind of curiosity factor there, and trying to utilise some of the learning resources that our organisations are providing to us as staff and as professional people, really. And it's often in these contexts that the corporate AI offerings are provided. So your co-pilots or whatever, often the Microsoft tools in central and local government. So that's quite an important operating context for libraries at the moment in terms of utilising AI within your organisation and your practice. As a national library, there's a couple of, and we've got mandates to be part of an international community, and there's a couple of interesting projects that I'm keeping an eye on, or that we're keeping an eye on. One is that the National Library of Norway have signed an agreement enabling the use of content from Norwegian newspapers and training our Norwegian artificial intelligence models. This was signed, it's less than a year old, this agreement. The Norwegian state funded, it's essentially a licensing program via the National Library that will pay for the data and generate content or use content from the National Library of Norway to develop Norwegian and Sami language models. And then they'll be made freely available to the public. Quite interesting as national organisation what our role is there as well in terms of the New Zealand language and Māori, and Te Reo especially. That image was generated using AI as well. The National Film and Sound Archive in Australia has also essentially developed a sort of a national AI tool called Bowerbird, and it's to support the agency's own digital future. Essentially, it's machine learning enabled mass audio and video transcript engine. As the largest collection of audio material in Australia, they've built this model and trained it to speak Australian. There is a National Digital Forum presentation from these guys about Bowerbird that's openly available on YouTube if someone can find it and send a link in the chat. I encourage it. I really like it because they've essentially, they realize the challenge of trying to adopt global AI tools within their own organization and with their own workflows, because Australian language is different in many ways, even though it's English, it's quite different. And one of the funny ones that I always take to heart was that they trained it to distinguish between an avo and an arvo, or an avocado and an afternoon. So they've essentially trained the model to speak Australian, and they're now using it as part of their own workflow, and institutions in Australia are trying to figure out how best to make use of what they've developed there. Really quick overview of a few things, but I thought I'd highlight where the questions that we're trying to grapple with. I think Erin Arndt said before, this isn't something where we've got all the answers at the moment. This isn't a debate, but more like an articulation of the direction that we're heading and some of the tensions we're trying to address and some of the questions we're trying to figure out. These are the ones that is responsible for coordinating the AI program at the National Library of New Zealand and Archives New Zealand, like that really sort of are framing our work. Does AI scraping of our collections help or hinder our strategic access objectives? It's part of our kaupapa to provide access, and part of the challenge and criticisms of global AI is that they don't reflect, or that they're incredibly biased towards North American and and European ways of thinking. So what's our role there? And the values that are helping guide that are our kaitiakitanga and our mana tauriti sort of objectives, this tension between guardianship and equity of access. Whose voices are amplified and silenced through increasing global use of AI to access and interpret our information. Again, that kind of equity view. And 3 is kind of part of that as well. If the internet is increasingly the place where answers are provided rather than a Google search sending you to the place where you can find answers to your questions, but the answers are provided to you, then what is our role in best connecting people to collections and to the information that we hold in libraries? And that equity mana tauriti value is very much there as well. But also, I think, rangapu me te mahitahi, so our partnerships and collaboration. Like how do we partner up to do this well as New Zealand, and in a tech infrastructure world where we can't really compete with the richest people and countries in the world? How do we get the partnership right to deliver that? And we've partnered up with a project called Tahi, being run by led by Radio New Zealand and NZ Geographic, in terms of delivering a sovereign AI project, a sovereign AI bot to help sort of understand and deliver New Zealand answers to New Zealand people. That's just started to sort of roll out in July this year. Also, one of the questions I've been grappling with is, do we, for the first time in a long time, have a competitive advantage over big tech? And by that I mean, for the last sort of 20 years, we've worked really hard to try and sort of position ourselves for the search engines to provide access to our collections and support the ways in. But actually, we've now got something that that big tech wants. And I'm not sure we're well set up to deliver that. My immediate thought was, and I've been asked this at quite a senior level, is, well, how do we monetize our access then to provide this? And I was like, well, we've got some kaupapa around trust and transparency that we've got to take some time to consider this. And so that's the value, one of the main values that's guiding that work. And again, what's our role as librarians within our larger organizational environments? And part of the reason I put that DIA intranet screenshot up there was that I think part of our own kaupapa, what's core to us as librarians is this continuous learning as professionals. And I really do encourage you to engage with the learning that's being provided through this group, but also within your own organizations, to learn what Copilot looks like, how it works for you, and other tools that you can utilize. And then I thought also, as librarians within our organizations, all of these values are useful for us to have our voice as librarians within our organizations to say, if we considered the equity issues there, well, what's our role between tensions between trust and equity? That's not the next slide I'm going to share. That's a really quick overview of, I'm just trying to find you. There you are.
Yes, I'm here. That was great. That was great.
It's a quick overview of AI at National Library of New Zealand, if that helps.
That was fantastic. Thank you. The parts that really jumped out to me is trust, because that is what we have. And you're right. I work for a tech company, and trust is what people talk about. And it's that tension, right? Monetizing trust. I don't know how you do that, but empowering growers, that's something I feel so strongly about as well. The more that we can keep learning, keep sharing, then it's you personally grow and you help people around you. So that's, I think, what our roles are all about. So thank you very much for that. Lots to think about there. And definitely the words balance, tensions, I think, come up when you do talk about values and some of these tricky questions. So yes, that was great. Can we launch our first poll, please?
We can. Erin, there was a question from Andrew. What was the name? Oh, actually, Mark, question for you. What was the name of the New Zealand tool, please?
Yeah, it was Tahi. I'll find a link and send it through, TAHI.
Thank you.
And you find the one that's been, it's offered via Epic actually out through public libraries as a subscription. And yeah, so it's available to all libraries via the Epic platform if you choose to take it up. But it's only just been released in July, so it's just early days.
I'm sure someone will post the link. You can't have a session with a whole lot of information professionals and no one goes off to find the the links that are coming up in the chat.
Here you go, Erin.
Oh,
Poll
excellent.
one.
Poll 1. So this is just a quick snapshot. Which LIANZA values do you find most challenging to apply when using AI? Ooh, and you can only select up to 2. So I kind of just what jumps out at you the most, because we'll need to keep moving along. And while you're doing that, Victoria, get ready because you're just about on. How's it looking for our poll answers?
Yeah, we've got pretty high numbers. Do you want to give it another 10 seconds and
10
close
seconds.
it off?
Here we
10
go.
seconds.
Yeah.
Where do you put that second option? 4, 3. Right, poll ending. Your results.
Drum roll.
There we go.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. So trust, yeah, kaitiakitanga, sorry, guardianship. Interesting. Yeah, collaboration. I think we do that well, don't we, in our profession? So, yeah, no, that's really interesting. We'll do a write-up afterwards of this, so we will include those results. So next up, we have Victoria Passau, who is in our AI committee, and she is also the online Cenotaph and Enquiry Services Manager at Auckland War Memorial Museum. So Victoria will have I guess, a different lens on this, but I imagine similar. So Victoria, would you like to share your reflections on values and working in an AI information environment?
Hui mai tātou mō tēnei wahi ko Victoria Passau tōku ingoa. Kei tāmaki pangihira ahau e mahi ana he kai whakahaere online Cenotaph me te pātaka matapuna ahau. Kia ora everybody. I'm Victoria and I have had the privilege of working at Auckland Museum for the past 12 years, looking after mainly online Cenotaph, which is a military database of about 270,000 service personnel, as well as in the last few years looking after access through our research library, and my team also responds to the inquiries sent through collections and research. So all of our collections-based inquiries, and last year we responded to about 5,000 inquiries. So we have a lot of experience in that space. Mark has really provided an incredible broad perspective of AI. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about boots on the ground, sort of like experience, and especially in the inquiry space, as well as the work that I do in looking after online Cenotaph. So, you know, a lot of what we do is about upholding trust and providing access and empowering our communities to access information in our collections. And when I first was asked to speak, I was like, oh, am I just going to talk about like data analysis? And then I was like, that's not very groundbreaking, because that's what a lot of people will use AI for. But then I was sort of reflecting when we were having a chat last week, is that museums have always been early adopters of technology and supporting our communities to access information using through new tech. So this is just part of our normal everyday use of and our professional experience that we will bring to AI and the way that we use it. But also it's a way around, again, bringing that professional lens, is how we use it, what we delegate to providing to like a large language model, and how we interpret that information. That's a lot of our work. And so that's the tension that we bring, is that we're putting information into a system potentially that isn't upholding the mana of the collections that we care for specifically. But what I've so professional judgment, I think that's exactly what is so key to our mahi. But it's also what we've been finding in the last few weeks is the impact on our users. And so I think that's probably currently the most significant issue for my team, especially in terms of inquiries, is how it is changing the way that people are now accessing information. And so a lot of my role revolves around inquiries. People contact us to access our collections, but also to understand the collections that we hold. And at the moment with the Google AI summary, it is absolutely impacting people's experience, and not in a, again, not in a mana enhancing way. So people are coming in physically to the space, into the library, and asking us questions, but also a lot online and over the phone. And it's this, they just expect the information that's been provided is generous and accurate. And so our role, which is, again, leads into our professional experience, is using the skills around research inquiries, reference support, is unpicking for people where information is coming from, what the sources were selected. And I'll give you an example where for online Cenotaph, it's all about people. And so that is really significant to people. That's people's whakapapa, that's their family. That is like a very personal, especially if people may have died in active service, that is a really emotionally significant collection that we care for. And there's been some AI overviews that have hallucinated and maybe drawn information that is accurate from online Cenotaph, but then has drawn information from other sources that is not reflecting that person's life accurately. For example, Papers Past, no offense to Papers Past, we love Papers Past, but it was pulling in, for example, a person who was in the police gazettes, but that wasn't the right person. And so they think that we're putting that information into the Cenotaph record, but it's just the AI overview. So we have been having to really show, and I think this is the thing about us, trust and equity, and just being really supportive and generous to our communities who do not have that digital literacy. And also being understanding that, you know, knowledge is also within these AI systems, that what knowledge is absent. And so explaining to people that this is not covering everything about them, about that person. The beauty of online Cenotaph and Auckland Museum is that we've had an open access policy for the last decade. And so we have provided our data, so the text, limited amount of data from our collections as CC BY license. So we are understanding that that information is out there. As Mark said, that's what libraries do, is we share information that is verified and reliable. And that's another thing about trust and the brand of our brand as librarians. But we also acknowledge that AI is a new audience. And so we know that that information is being drawn on. And so we have to sort of be open-minded to that, that not our information may not be utilised in a way that has been traditionally used before, but it will support a better and more accurate data set if they're not just pulling from, I don't know, from Reddit threads. So we have traditionally thought that our audiences are researchers, you know, whānau students, but now it is another audience that we need to consider. And there's obviously a tension there that Mark has talked about, and especially in terms of ethics. And what we find so important in our work is attribution, context, care, respect, all those things that we add into our data, then it's being utilised in different ways. But we can see our communities using that AI data. So we should be actively thinking of ways that we can support the accurate information being added to it. And I know that not all institutions are able to have open access policies like Auckland Museum. However, I think that maybe we can mute Bronwyn.
Oh, yes,
Is that I think we just have to be honest about that. We are contributing data to the system, and I think that is where it comes down to, again, that professional experience and practice, is that we understand the nuance of information. We've done this for a very long time, especially in the last few years, around information that is not always accurate from different countries or journalists and all that sort of jazz. So this isn't something new, it's just involving a different system. I think that we, especially at the museum, it's all about supporting our communities. So we're trying to empower the people who are trying to learn more information and understanding how AI works. That is all about the values that we portray through LIANZA. And as Mark said, our competitive advantage is trust. People trust what we do. So we need to lead and not be afraid that we can bring the skill sets that we have all learnt through our work and to create reliable metadata, maintain our authority records, support our public in educating them on how to access information and preserving the context, because people will, I feel like, will always come back. Well, I hope this may not be true, but come back to the source, because as they understand AI that has hallucinates and all that sort of jazz, people don't trust what we do at Online Cenotaph, for example, because it's simply because it's online. They trust it because there's a human person involved in thinking and creating that information. So I think that's what will give it that authority. I don't think I will be replaced, because we are doing thinking and connecting, and none of the AI that I use is ever used without the context of my own thinking. And so it is a tool to support my mahi. And I think the key for me when I did that, I did the poll, is that trust is probably the most important thing, is that we are genuinely engaging with our communities to provide genuine information to them. And from a text sort of standpoint, at the moment we're redeveloping our collections online and Online Cenotaph, and so the museum is actively putting into place a MCP, or a model context protocol, to enable information to be shared with AI, because we're trying to actively engage with giving them information that doesn't mean we are also getting hit by bots at the same time as well. So I think what we contribute is that we contribute accurate, structured, and contextualized information, and we help people understand that information. And so we've encouraged people to come to our collections, and now that may be people may be accessing us in a different way, but we just have to figure about how are those values traveling in the AI space now. Yeah, like, how do we treat AI as a new audience, and for our information to be attributed and with context and care and human judgment to make it that a trustworthy pool of information. So those are all the tensions that I'm currently facing at the moment. Hopefully that wasn't too garbled. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Victoria. That was excellent. Don't know if you could see, but I kept nodding my head along. So
I appreciate it.
Yes. And again, yeah, talking about that tension. Also wrote down, bring it. I like how you're like, yeah, let's bring it, right? Bring our skills, bring our experience. Like, we have this. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's
we're not purely the consumers of it. We are contributing to it, and we're enriching it. And so I think that there has to be like a confidence in knowing my skill set will be able to decipher the information that somebody is accessing, and it will help people. And that's what we do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that point you said about the new audiences, right? That's positive, because that opens us up to more people, opens up collections. So gives us that opportunity to tell our story and to demonstrate our value. And maybe that's something that it is something that the association's working on too. Like, how can we effectively tell our stories so people understand that we are shaping, the information that AI is returning?
Yeah, and I mean, online Cenotaph, I should have said, that has enabled user contributions for the last 10 years. And so we've always engaged in that. We are not gatekeepers. We're not the perfect, the end point, the most perfect piece of data that has ever been put online. It is incomplete. We're work in progress, which is actually every collection ever. So it is being generous to our public, is to enable them to be able to augment that. And I think that AI, as I said, is a tool. It is not the replacement. And it is, it is lucky that our content has been out in the world for 10 years, so we're a bit more comfortable in that space. I don't necessarily think it is a bad thing. But you can control with open access what people use the information for. This is just a different way of utilizing it, with just a lot more ethical considerations, I guess.
Yes, ethics. That's I guess a topic on what I was going to say, everyone's mind, but not everyone. Maybe not all the people who are in control of all the big frontier models. But thank you, Victoria, for that. So let's have our second poll, and then we will open it up to everyone. So this poll is: which LIANZA values most often guide your decisions about using AI? And so this is in your professional space as well. So thinking about your collections and how you use it in your work environment. And again, you can only select up to 2. It would have been harder if we just said 1, I think. I don't know. But we've got the options there. And it'll be interesting to see the values that are most challenging, and then I think the values that most often guide your decisions, which is in this poll. So we will take a look at that.
We're approaching 70%, Erin.
Oh, fantastic. I love it. Engaged audience. That's what we like to see.
Right, we'll do the last 10 seconds. We're almost on 80.
Here we go. So we're going to do a countdown again.
Oh, there we go. I waited. Sorry.
No, that's all good. Oh, yes. Trust and kaitiakitanga. Yeah, interesting. The other 2, empowerment. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic to see that. Yeah, thank you everyone for contributing to those polls. Helps everyone join the kōrero, and I guess can just spark those reflections as well too on how which values we are using and reflecting on. And sometimes we're using them without realizing as well too. So it's a good chance to just kind of reflect back on what the values are. So this is a part where we're going to open it up to the audience. And I think just to set the scene as well, we want to really tie into the LIANZA values today. So that's what we want to be talking about. We've had some great speakers, so I'm sure if anyone has questions directly for the speakers, you can probably just pop those in chat and they can be picked up, or we can deal with those later. But it would be great if you want to pop your hand up if you want to speak, and we can work through. Do people want to talk about the tensions that they have encountered? Has today's discussion shifted your thinking? Or what support could LIANZA provide in relation to these values? So let's see who wants to be brave and chat.
so many in the room. It might just be someone starts talking because I'm scanning the hands.
Okay.
I'm scanning 4 hands, but there's over 130 of us in here.
Okay. So I'm one of them. I might just start then, if that's all right.
Go for it.
So firstly, thank you to all of you for your presentations. It's really interesting to hear those different perspectives. And one of the things that's coming up a lot in the chat, we're talking about talking about the example you gave, Victoria, of some of the information around the cenotaph and some really interesting conversations there. I've got a slightly unusual situation where I work for a large private corporation that in New Zealand is a medium-sized business, but we're a global company. And so we've got the interesting dichotomy of, as an example, our global company level records management guidelines, but our national legislative requirements like PRA 2005 and Privacy Act and all those things, and trying to find that where things overlap. And we're trying to work out at a company level what AI looks like for us, again, with that local twist to it. But what makes it particularly interesting is the grand majority of the people I work with are either scientists or engineers. And so for them, AI is increasingly this golden opportunity to how can we improve and get our materials working in a better way. And we're now negotiating, okay, what does that mean in terms of, if you're reading a resource, I have to advocate for, you have to remember to adhere to copyright and to all intellectual property, and you can't put things in Copilot. And then what does it mean like that? So there's all these other places within the company trying to navigate what AI looks like. And as I'm sure a lot of us have experienced at some point in our career, with the way that most organizations, basically anything that didn't start post-digital age starting, we all started from an analog place, which would have meant that there's a certain degree of siloing for different departments and old habits. And there's a couple of generations that may be having a harder time with that than others. But it means trying to navigate that and remind people that this is something we can't be siloed anymore. We're an increasingly Venn diagram where more and more of us are in that gray area. So when I answered the last poll, I put kaitiakitanga and respect, because those are the only two things I can control in terms of what I bring into it, is my awareness of where materials are from and what I'm looking for and where hallucinations are. And it's a very interesting challenge to be faced with, also as a solo librarian within the company, with no digital background. I'm traditionally a librarian, and moving increasingly into that space. It's just it's definitely it's just an interesting additional challenge right now in terms of AI. It's on everyone's lips in one way or another. And there's only so much you can do before, the advice you provide is already, by the time you provide it, it's no longer it's no longer current. So yeah, it's interesting.
I wonder in your context whether like having institutional AI is valid if you put in the data that relates to your work, and then it is only trained on that information
So we do have as a corporation, we have a partnership with Microsoft that gives us our own Copilot that we can work with within the context of the work networks. But I think one of the issues that many of us, I'm sure, in some shape or form are dealing with, and I was hearing it a lot in what you were sharing, Victoria, is it's a degree of it is managing the expectations of how people think AI operates, even though it may not be there yet. There are places where people way overestimate what it, or the accuracy with which AI is achieving something, and it's navigating that as much as anything else. Not least because it's by no means my specialty area. So learning on the fly as well. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting challenge from that point of view.
Yeah, thanks, Hal. I think that also bringing it back to the values, it comes back to that empower and grow, doesn't it? So it's empowering ourselves with AI literacy, and it's also within the organizations. It's so important, right, that the leadership invests their time and their knowledge, because that's what's, I guess, permitting the different uses of it. And so it's so important to have that AI literacy, and not just one half an hour, tick box. It's that continued learning, continued conversation. So and I mean, this is just, one idea could be you could start a little kōrero group, I don't know, and that's amazing, right? So it's those conversations.
We also have, we've got one of our legal counsel, and one of, in the region is privacy and AI and information, all that stuff, sort of advice. But it's also, just making sure we're having that conversation. The question around Indigenous data sovereignty is something that's come up and is being taken seriously. What I would love, possibly from the LIANZA side of it, just to bring it back to this kaupapa, is, maybe a couple of resources around, kind of questions to start conversations. Because I'm very aware everyone's got a slightly different situation, but we're all going to be dependent on the organization that we're based out of. So if you don't know about it, where's a good place to start, or who are some key contact people, or, is there, things like that, maybe, maybe how to start a conversation, things to take into consideration, any recommended resources like podcasts or anything else. I've found those to be incredibly helpful in the past. So,
cool. Yeah, we do have our AI committee webpage with resources on there, and we continue to build that out as well. But no, that's really interesting to hear about the conversations as well too, and how to start them. That's great. Thank you. Do we have another person who would like to speak? I can see we've got a few things going on in chat.
Can I just respond, Erin, to a couple of the comments in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
There's been a few comments about environmental impacts. And instead of typing my response to them all, I've typed a couple. I just thought I'd say, for those values that are important to you as a professional, is more importantly your organisation you work for. If environmental sustainability is part of that, and in New Zealand it tends to be, then that just becomes part of the values conversation you have as part of procurement processes or partnering relationships and engagement, etc. And sometimes within your organisation that might be hard if you're part of a broader organisation, but it's very much part of the conversations we've been having at National Library in terms of who we partner with, not just with AI, but with digital storage and other things as well. We just started moving to Microsoft Azure North, and part of our considerations there is that they've invested significantly in geothermal energy based out of Tupō to power their servers in Auckland, right? So that was a critical part of what we considered our requirements into who we partner with and why. And sometimes you say partner, but actually it's a commercial relationship. But those commercial relationships are still important for us from a values perspective, and it links back to trust, right? So do your customers see you as a trusted player in this space, and what relationships you have with global, local, national organizations as part of that? So very much I encourage you to bring that trust relationship, which is clearly important. It's come in quite a lot in the polls to those conversations.
Great, thank you, Mark. We might have time for one more person. Anyone brave enough to talk?
Also, just to add that for the tahi example I gave, our collections have not fully, or the parts of our collections that we're contributing there are not fully integrated into that model yet, so you won't see. I'm not sure if yours are, Victoria.
No, I don't think we've been contacted as yet. Yeah. But they are there.
Cool. One question I had too for everyone on the chat is, I guess, what's one thing you're taking away from today's conversation? If anyone would like to make a short reflection on that or pop it in the post. Has this changed how you think about AI? Has it made it harder? As we kind of, dig under the surface? I think that's what makes it so interesting and complex to be working right now, is that it's it's not easy, right? There's a whole lot of things, and just how you interact, the tools that you use, the systems, the licensing involved. But I think, to keep coming back to the value of your own knowledge and skills and experience, and to trust in that. And I think also to reach out too, because we have this association, and it is hard when you've got, you're the sole person in your team. So who can you connect to? Who can you connect to within the association? Can you connect within your own regional LIANZA group as well? Kōrero can be happening there.
One of the things, Erin, that guide, like in pulling the presentation together, I was actually it was quite interesting being reinforced just how much the values are guiding us. Like they kind of like frame and help steer you in certain directions. And it wasn't until I'd fully put the values link to all those tensions in my presentation. I think someone shared that slide earlier, that I'd kind of understood exactly how much that thinking had come into our decision making.
Kia ora, Erin. Hi, it's Neda from MAT. Hi. Hi, Mark. I hope you can hear me. I just want to say what really rings a bell with me, and sorry, I'm just having this funny headphones on, so I look a bit weird, is that us librarians, any conversation around AI in terms of our work and what we do is highly relevant. So regardless if it's, our learning development design, support for students, or using different systems and managing our resources. But what I more and more find in practice is that us librarians are becoming also part of in the crossfire within the discussion about AI between different parties, because we have our stakeholders, we have our colleagues in different teams we collaborate with, we have our clients, our users, our students, people who use our libraries. So what I find myself finding in between, for example, academic staff, there are some who are really promoting and very passionate about using AI and work with their students with AI. And then there are some who are strongly against it and really disciplined, they're very strict about using AI and so on. And I actually find more and more, it's more like a matter of personal preference, not necessarily related to the discipline and so on. But also between our clients, some are very eager to learn and quite inquisitive, but some are quite resistive towards it and antagonistic, and they feel very worried and scared, and they just really try to stay away from it. So as librarians, as professionals, we are right in the middle of that, and we have to juggle both, right? And we are the ones who are sort of trying to find the right measure, the right relationship with it, and would, whatever we do in whatever area of our work within profession, try to sort of juggle that and find the right way, and so that we can provide support for all parties, whether they are strongly against or strongly for it, and adapt in the way they use it and the level they want to engage with it. So that what makes our role even more complex, but also these conversations highly relevant. So I just want to say thank you so much.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you. Yeah, I think you're right on point there, isn't it? It's engaging with people who are in different places as well, and I guess just critically thinking about the tool and the purpose and the use for it as well, because that all comes into play as well. So thank you very much. We've had a great engagement on the chat, and thank you so much to Mark and Victoria for speaking and reflecting and being brave and sharing, and to everyone who jumped online as well. And so Paula, I'll pass it back to you to wrap up with the closing karakia.
And a big thank you to you, Erin, for pulling this together on top of your day job. This has been gold for so many of us in lots of different ways, and having this conversation in a safe space for us to talk, debate. But I love the way you prefaced our hui today around exploring, listening and leaning into. Might be uncomfortable, it might be really giving us a fire up. So no, kia ora, thank you so much. Right, to close our hui, ono here te pō whiri marama, tomo kia te ao whātu tangata, tātai ki ronga, tātai ki raro, tātai ahoro, humie, hui, tā kie. Kia ora everybody, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks all. Ngā mihi.